Hello friends, and welcome to part 2 of the figuring out what to do with fake ground chicken saga. The high today is in the low 50s, but right now it's in the 40s. Let's try to make some chicken meatball soup. I have half an onion cut in this bowl right now, and we're waiting for water to boil out of that pot just because we're hitting the dumpling video back to back and convenience. But as soon as the water boils out, this is gonna go in the pot to brown. I have a cup of carrot chopped up and about half a cup of celery. I personally would add a whole cup of celery, but significant other is kind of iffy on the taste. He is okay with it, but doesn't really like it. And that sounds like the water's boiled out. We're adding the onion. Here is our bowl of weird stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and add about a tablespoon of nutritional yeast. And let's do half a tablespoon for everything else. Half a tablespoon of red pepper, half a tablespoon of garlic, half a tablespoon of basil, half a tablespoon of oregano, a little bit of black pepper, a little bit of salt, and like before, the best mixing is just to get in there. I don't think that this needs a binder like an egg or anything like that because it's already just sticking together so much. And I guess that makes sense because it's supposed to be a hamburger patty, so it's already supposed to be binded together somewhat. Looks like we've got all the spices in there in some way, shape, or form. Now we're just making sure that everything is evenly distributed. Now we are only limited by the size we want our meatballs. And I think about that big, I don't know, maybe that looks like it'll fit in a tablespoon. Here he is in a tablespoon, and just keep on rolling until you're done. Well, that is entirely too brown. This is gonna give us a little bit more time to make the meatballs by having the heat feed into more stuff at once. I'm also gonna go ahead and add some of the homemade veggie broth that I made yesterday. I'm gonna go ahead and add a bay leaf too. Well, that's a little one, so we'll add a second little guy. Yeah, 2 little bay leaves. I'm fully aware that the pot was a little bit too hot, but that's a mistake that I made, knowing that it was probably a mistake. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of garlic powder to this. I have 23 balls and the pot of soup is already to a boil, so I'm gonna go ahead and drop these in. I did add some cool water, which stopped it from the boiling. The goal is to make sure that they're separated enough that they don't just like stick together. I don't think we're gonna have a problem meeting that goal. So I'm probably gonna salt this and it's going to bring back up to a boil. Then I'm gonna cover it and let it simmer for, I don't know, maybe 10-20 minutes. I'm also gonna add a little spoon of this because I got it because I like cream cheese, but it does not have the texture of cream cheese. It's very runny. I'm not too into it. Let's see if we can make this like a creamy soup. And that's about a tablespoon. The soup pot is simmering with the lid on it, and I have 100 grams of vermicelli, little teeny tiny noodles right behind it in a separate pot, because if you cook the noodles in the soup and wait a little bit, they tend to just suck up all the soup broth and get really fat. It's a weird texture and not an enjoyable experience. So soup pro tip, do your noodles separately, ideally in some broth of the soup so it does soak in some of that flavor, but separately from the soup itself. I will say it looks significantly less like soup with meatballs in it and more like meatballs with gravy. Will adding noodles help? I don't know. No, not very. It just looks like meatballs, gravy, and some noodles now. If you want it to look more soupy, you can definitely add the full can of broth. I think the can is about 2.5, maybe 3 cups, and I used maybe 1.5 cup of broth. Significant other does not like brothy soup. He likes thicker stuff like chowder, so that's kind of why I don't really add a lot of the brothiness to it, but taste test for me. I think it's a little bit spicier than most people would like, just because it's got a little bit. You can definitely get that kick of red pepper that I put in there. I like it. I don't think it's bad. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get the child to taste it, but we'll probably be able to get significant other to say if he thinks that it is too spicy. The meatball, I don't think it tastes like chicken. I don't think it tastes like anything except for the spices that we put in it, but I guess that's kind of what chicken tastes like. It just tastes like nothing until you spice it. The texture, I think it feels like a little bit chewy, so it's not bad, but I don't know if that's just how meat feels. I think the moral of this story is that you can't get a vegan to tell you if this tastes like chicken. But I do have a significant other that eats meat, so let's see if we can get his 2 cents on this subject.
Okay, so as a meat eater, what do you think of the meatballs that look like they're in gravy but also noodles? That's supposed to be soup, but you don't like soup.
Like, as there are 2 things that kind of come to mind. There's the texture and there's the taste of it. The texture reminds me of like kind of like a dumpling more than it does of meat. Like it's almost like kind of like a breading built in with what I would normally think of as like ground meat.
Interesting, because I thought it was like chewier than I remember meat being.
Yeah, that's definitely what comes to my mind when I just think of dumpling, with that chewy, spongy kind of texture. The taste is kind of like if you had meat and you just spiced the out of it, and that's not a bad thing. It's just definitely a spice explosion as you eat it.
Chicken doesn't taste like anything until you spice it, so I thought that was, you know, chicken tasting at least.
Yeah. Yeah, in that regard, it's a fun experience. The texture, if you're looking for like a meatball texture, this is not it.
Yeah. I don't think this is an experiment that I would like to repeat again necessarily.
I get you.
Okay.
I'm enjoying it.
Love you. The camera cannot see how cute you are.
And it never will.